Discover the incredible moment a CEO's heart transformed when a poor girl sat down unexpectedly. Charley Evans, CEO of Nextech Innovations, sat at a sleek table inside one of downtown San Jose's cutting-edge restaurants, the bustling scene around him a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within. He adjusted his cufflinks, the movement instinctive and elegant, but his mind drifted like a raft in a stormy sea. His staff expected brilliance, strategic plans, and profitability, but all he felt was a gnawing tension. The weight of relentless ambition threatened to break him, and somewhere, beneath the polished exterior and tailored suits, a flicker of his childhood struggles warped his confidence into a shadowy monster. Today, of all days, that past felt unbearable. The waiter approached, and Charley offered a distracted nod, his thoughts split over the pressing business lunch waiting. Casual laughter from other tables danced in the air, and then the bell jingled with new arrivals. Charley barely noticed them until a small figure slipped through the throng, eyes fixed resolutely on him. A girl, no older than 12, emerged. Her dirty sneakers stood out against the polished floors of the restaurant. He frowned. This wasn't the time or place for distractions. "Excuse me, sir," she called out, her voice hovering between uncertainty and determination as she approached with purpose. Charley hesitated, the sharp lines of his world colliding with her untamed hope. "I'm busy," he replied brusquely, lifting his phone as if it were a shield. He had to get back to the meeting, had to focus on the balance sheets and quarterly forecasts. Didn't she understand the stakes? Yet her determination remained unyielding. But when she spoke again, her honesty cut through his defenses like a knife. "I just need a chance. I want to learn. I want to escape, please." Her fear echoed the raw emotions he'd buried throughout his own journey. He instinctively recoiled. Did he want to open that door? Did he want to be reminded of where he came from? "Listen, he began, but she rushed on, telling him about her life in the projects, the lack of guidance, the pain of missed opportunities. Something in her striking eyes, a reflection of his younger self, flickered a recognition as she laid bare her struggles. The cafeteria tables in his memory swarmed by kids who dreamed but lacked the means to make them real. Charley's grip on his phone tightened. His father had vanished, and his mother had fought undaunted in those days of hardship. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." His heart raced as he analyzed her desperation through his own lens, torn between his business dealings and an emotional connection he'd thought buried forever. Can she really escape? Can I help her? All at once, it felt impossible and yet, compelling. A knife edge of discomfort dug deeper. He felt the specters of his own past rising. What if her story ended the same way his mother's had in him? Failure. Judgment. For the first time, his ambition faltered as vulnerability seeped through his executive facade. She stood before him, eyes glossy with hope, and he realized he was being challenged in ways he never anticipated. Would he continue in this polished world of privilege that often overlooked the battle fought by brave souls like her? The choices surged, each more overwhelming than the last as he caught a glimpse of a far greater mission, and it tugged heavily at him. And then a bitter truth emerged. What if he discovered her father had once been one of his employees, hoping, struggling, seeking a better life? The revelation hit him like a tidal wave. Would he let another child like Mia slip through his fingers at a time when he had finally found purpose? With impending decisions looming, Charley's resolve trembled. As the atmosphere thickened, he felt the weight of his survival drawbacks. Everything hung in the balance. The table of corporate elites waited, but now, their smiles felt hollow, and Mia's hopeful gaze burned as the stakes grew impossible to ignore. He grasped the microphone, aware that he was on the brink of a crossroads that could alter lives, including his own. Would he dare step into the uncertainty, or would he turn away, yet again, from a moment that could change everything? Charlie's heart raced as the microphone felt like a lifeline in the swirling uncertainty. The chatter from the corporate elites faded into a dull hum, overshadowed by the raw honesty he'd just encountered. He stared at Mia, a catalyst for change, her eyes wide with expectation, and suddenly the weight of his own ambitions felt trivial compared to the urgency of her plea. What did it mean to lead? Was it merely about numbers, profits, and quarterly forecasts? Or was it about influencing lives, igniting dreams, and opening doors that too often remained shut? The questions sank deep, curling around his mind, urging him to confront the softer part he had long tucked away. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady yet unaccustomed to vulnerability. "I need a moment." He walked away from the table, feeling like a marionette cutting loose its strings. The polished floor felt different beneath his feet, as if it were grounding him, awakening a part of him, the part that cared. "Why did you come here?" Charley asked Mia, his tone softer now, defending against the chaos as an unexpected calm washed over him. "What do you want from a stranger?" "I want a chance," she replied earnestly, her intensity unwavering. "I want to learn about technology. I see everything changing, but I don't have anyone to teach me. I just need someone to believe in me." In that moment, the world around him shifted. Every success he had achieved, every promotion, every dollar, it all suddenly felt empty in contrast to Mia's hope and desperation. He realized that he had spent so long chasing shadows of validation that he had forgotten the spark of genuine connection. What if investing in her meant more than just a fleeting moment of altruism? What if she was the missing piece in his life's puzzle? Charlie's mind raced through possibilities, the wheels of his corporate machine turning to a different rhythm. Could he mentor her? Mind spun with the questions that now seemed to loom larger than his entire career. What if he could create a program for underprivileged kids interested in technology? A way to provide mentorship and scholarship opportunities? "A chance," he murmured, rolling the word over like a precious stone. "But what if it's more than that, Mia? What if we build something together?" Her face brightened as realization crept in. "You would help with that? You mean it?" "Yes. I need to get it right this time. I can't keep chasing success without purpose." Charley felt the heat of urgency surge through him. This wasn't just about networking or profits. This was about building a legacy. His mother's spirit demanded it. He reached for the table, sensing the corporate elites may now seem like strangers in a disconnected dream. "Business isn't only for the well-connected," Charley proclaimed, the tremor of conviction in his stomach igniting a frequency of change. "It shouldn't be. We can do something real, something that lasts." As he shaped a plan in his mind, contrasting his past struggles with his current privilege, the silhouettes of opportunities began to take form. He envisioned workshops, internships, scholarships, a community of youth ready to seize technology and reshape their futures. The simplest interaction had ignited fire within him. What else could he uncover in that pursuit? The thrill of innovation had replaced the cold calculations of the boardroom. This mission beckoned something greater, more profound than any financial quarter he had chased before. But in the midst of his excitement, doubt lurked. Would the board of directors support such a venture? Could he convince them to invest in a program designed to help children from the very projects he had escaped? And deeper still, a creeping fear that after all these years, he may not have the power to change the industry from within. With the enormity of his desire for impact fusing with the lingering shadows of unresolved self-doubt, Charley understood he stood at a precipice. This moment could lead to a complete recalibration of his character, a bold declaration of what he truly stood for. He looked back at Mia. And her hopeful spirit anchored him. "Let us meet tomorrow. We'll plan this out." She nodded eagerly, eyes shining with a determination he now recognized and respected. Yet, even as plans began to solidify, the specter of resistance rose like an uninvited guest. The room suddenly felt charged again, the expectations of those seated at the corporate table weighing heavy on him. Tomorrow might be just the beginning, but can I really pull this off? Charley questioned himself gravely, aware that the impending decisions would test every fiber of his leadership. Tomorrow arrived uninvited, and with it, the knowledge that nothing about this new journey would be simple. As he left the restaurant, a gust of wind whipped around him, fierce and relentless, mirroring the turbulence in his heart, a reminder that tomorrow, he would confront the biggest challenge yet, the board. How would they react to his proposal, and what sacrifices would be required to see his vision come to fruition? The moment of truth hung just out of reach. The morning sun pierced through the blinds of Charlie's office, illuminating the sleek wooden desk scattered with papers and notes from the night before. Despite the brightness, Charlie felt a heaviness in his chest that mirrored the storm clouds brewing outside. He methodically arranged the materials he'd prepared for the meeting, rehearsing his pitch in his mind, but the familiar arguments of self-doubt whispered insidiously, gnawing at his confidence. He envisioned the boardroom a stark, sterile place where hard numbers danced like specters in the air. He imagined his colleagues, expressions veiled behind professionalism, their skepticism coiling palpable like smoke. "They're not going to want to divert funds," he muttered to himself, tossing a pen across the desk. "Why would they care about underprivileged kids when the stock prices are at stake?" But then Mia's face flashed in his mind, the determination in her eyes pulling him from a spiral of despair. Here was a girl whose future hung in the balance, and his shadow of doubt began to feel less important. He couldn't ignore her hopes, her ambition, not when they echoed his own youth. "Focus," Charlie told himself, sliding into the sole seat at the conference table, hands clasped tightly in front of him. He took a deep breath, resisting the urge to check the time again. His mind flooded with all the possibilities. He dreamed of creating programs enriching lives, scholarships transferring potential into reality. But the potential for defeat loomed large. The moment the board members filed in, their chatter filled the room with tension. Charlie kept his gaze steady, searching for a flicker of support in their faces. When they settled into their chairs, he felt his heart beat with an urgency he'd never known in their usual discussions about profits or market shares. With a composed exterior masking the inner turmoil, he began. "I appreciate everyone gathering today. I know discussions about our future hold immense weight, but I want to talk about something that goes beyond our immediate financial interests." He saw a slight skepticism in Derek's eyes, the board's most seasoned executive. Charlie pressed on, deciding to rely on the honest connection he recognized from his conversation with Mia. "I recently met someone, a young girl who wants to learn about technology and break barriers that have been set before her. It struck me deeply because I've realized that success isn't just about the peaks we reach, but about the lives we touch on the journey." The murmurs from the board quieted, their attention caught. Drawing inspiration from his experience, Charlie outlined the framework of his proposal, the mission of mentorship and empowerment he envisioned. He saw curiosity flicker from some members, but Derek remained unyielding, arching an eyebrow. "So you're suggesting we invest in a program for underprivileged kids in tech?" he queried, skepticism palpable. "This sounds noble, Charlie, but is it feasible? How will this benefit our bottom line?" Charlie felt the heat rise in him. It was easy to slip into defense mode, to protect his burgeoning ideals from confrontation. He could feel that uncertain rage surfacing. This was not about numbers. It wasn't simply about balancing ledgers. He forged ahead, drawing upon the conviction that filled him when he'd spoken to Mia. "No, it isn't just for the numbers," Charlie stated firmly. "It's about creating a pipeline of opportunity, a legacy. If we invest in these kids, we're crafting the future innovators of tomorrow. If they succeed, our entire industry benefits. It's a long game, but one worth investing in." Silence enveloped the room, and for a moment, the weight of his conviction hung in the air. Charlie could almost hear the gears of the board members' minds whirring, calculations mixed with the glimmer of possibility. But doubt crept in again as he anticipated their resistance. As he finished his pitch, he could feel a churning inside him, an eagerness mingled with fear. Would they embrace his vision? Would they see beyond their immediate interests to the potential that lay ahead? Knowing the stakes were personal yet professional, he held his ground, resolving to confront the challenge with unwavering integrity. But as Derek stood to speak, ready to lay out his counterarguments, Charlie anticipated the storm brewing behind that calm exterior. The time had come to face not just the executives, but the disquiet within himself. How much was he willing to risk to forge this new path? Would he let go of his entrenched fears for the sake of a mission that ignited his spirit, or would he fold back into the safety of conventional success? The room felt charged, teetering between potential and rejection. A defining moment awaited. Charlie's heart thudded violently in his chest as Derek rested his palms flat on the table, preparing to dismantle the fragile optimism that hung in the air. Each word from Derek felt like a sword drawn, the stakes intensified, and Charlie braced himself for the onslaught. Would he stay rooted in his mission, or fold under pressure? Derek cleared his throat, eyes sharp and assessing as he surveyed the room before landing his gaze on Charlie. While your intention is commendable, the simple fact is that our shareholders prioritize immediate returns. Investing in such programs could divert critical resources from our current projects. We need to ask ourselves, will this truly add value? Charlie felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. This was the point he'd been dreading, where the balance of ethics and profitability hung by a thread. But instead of retreating into self-doubt, Charlie felt an unexpected resolve begin to coalesce within him. Derek, he interjected, choosing his words carefully. I understand the implications of this proposal, and believe me, I've weighed the risks. But consider this: innovation thrives in diverse environments. If we equip these kids with knowledge, we are not just investing in their futures but in ours. They'll become tomorrow's creators, thinkers, and doers who can drive our industry forward. The tension in the room shifted slightly, the board members exchanging tentative glances. Charlie felt a rush of adrenaline, a recognition that he might just be breaking through. Perhaps he possessed a deeper understanding of their motives than he originally thought. Perhaps he could bridge this chasm between idealism and reality. Still, skepticism lingered like smoke. Charlie, what data do you have to prove that this approach would yield ROI? One of the board members challenged. Taking a deep breath, Charlie reached for the folder resting beside him, filled with statistics and case studies of successful tech initiatives aimed at underserved communities. He had meticulously gathered every piece of information, knowing there would be questions just like this one. He flipped it open, his fingers brushing over the printed pages, finding strength in what represented his hard work. Look at these examples, he urged, passing the materials across the table. Companies that invested in educational programs not only saw enhanced corporate social responsibility standings but also improved talent pools and even increased market competitiveness. This isn't a selfless act, it's a strategic decision grounded in mutual benefit. However, Derek remained unmoved. What you're proposing sounds great in theory, but these are people we are talking about, Charlie. Kids 1T just fit seamlessly into our existing structures. There's no safety net for this project, and we can't afford to fail. Charlie felt a flicker of anger rise but subdued it. But that's precisely the point. If we don't attempt to create those pathways, how will we ever find out? Investing in potential means inviting risk, but isn't that what innovation is all about? His voice resonated with newfound conviction, gaining momentum with each phrase. As he spoke, a glimmer of recognition took root in his mind. Was this pitch not merely a proposal on paper but a reflection of his life journey? Had he not also fought for his own opportunities amidst struggles, just as Mia was? It was in that moment that Charlie grasped the complexity of his argument. It was personal. With every syllable, the fragile confidence he built began to sprout roots inside him, grounding his fear. Charlie realized he was not just advocating for a project but reconfiguring his understanding of success itself. It wasn't enough to achieve personal milestones if those achievements came at the expense of others' potential. He could sense the shift in the room, hesitation giving way to contemplation among the board members. But would it be enough to sway Derek, the very gatekeeper of resources? As Charlie faced the growing tension, a sensation of clarity washed over him. He had embarked on this journey not only to fight for Mia but to redefine the legacy he wanted to leave behind, a legacy that transcended profit margins. Suddenly, a voice broke the hesitant silence. Why should we take this risk, Charlie? Derek pressed again, a steely determination in his expression. Charlie met his gaze, taking a moment to compose himself. The path lay before him, and he felt the weight of expectation not just from the boardroom, but from his own evolving sense of purpose. Because sometimes, the greatest victories emerge from the boldest risks. And this isn't just about me or this company. It's about carving out a new future where everyone has a chance to contribute. Determination pulsed through him, and his heart raced with the realization that the moment of truth had indeed arrived. Whether the board would embrace this vision or not remained uncertain, but he was prepared to fight for it, tooth and nail. Just as Charley prepared to delve deeper into his argument, Derek opened his mouth, ready to deliver his final verdict. Charley's breath hitched in anticipation. Was it the moment of breakthrough or despair? The boardroom felt electric, and he could already foresee the potential repercussions of whatever decision lay ahead. But beneath the tension lingered a question that haunted him. If they rejected this opportunity, how would it reshape not only his career but also define who he was becoming? His identity, once so entwined with corporate success, now hung precariously against a much larger cause. As Derek's voice cut through the thick silence, the weight of Charley's choices loomed large. A new path awaited, but would he have the fortitude to follow it? Derek leaned back, the tension sharp in his features, and his penetrating gaze locked onto Charley. Your proposal has merit in theory, Charley, but the numbers don't lie. We can't pursue every ambition just because it feels right. We have a responsibility to uphold. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in, and Charley felt a surge of frustration. Was this what his efforts had been reduced to, a clash of moral integrity and cold calculations? Responsibility, Charley echoed quietly, momentarily thrown off balance. What responsibility are we truly upholding if we neglect the potential for innovation? The silence that followed felt suffocating. Each board member was caught in a web of conflicting interests, their expressions revealing a reluctant acknowledgement of Charley's impassioned stance. He had come prepared, the statistics were undeniable, but now he grasped that his proposal needed more than merely empirical support. It needed humanity. Yet with that clarity came another dawning realization. He was not merely advocating for a project, he was challenging his own deeply ingrained beliefs about success. Until now, Charley had measured his worth through climbing the corporate ladder, achieving accolades, and hitting targets. But as he stood there facing his colleagues, he felt a radical shift within. What good was success if it came at the expense of those who had struggled far more than he ever had? Consider Mia, he continued, his voice steadying as he produced the mental image of her bright eyes shining with latent potential. She deserves a chance to create something incredible, even if it means stumbling through the darkness first. That dark path is where true innovation arises. If we can guide even a handful along that road, we're not just transforming lives, we're revolutionizing the industry. Emotion can't guide our decisions, Charley, Derek countered, the rigidness of his posture remaining unchanged. We are a business. Our primary focus should be profit and stability. Yes, Charley shot back, a defiant edge creeping into his tone. But shouldn't the definition of stability evolve? If we ignore the next generation, how do we expect the future of this industry to remain innovative? Change is what drives us. If we aren't willing to invest in our future, we may find ourselves stagnant when the world shifts around us. He saw a flicker of uncertainty in some of the board members' eyes, an awakening that hinted at his burgeoning influence over them. It was as if they were beginning to dismantle the wall they had built around their corporate mentality, allowing space for a hint of idealism to slip through the cracks. Yet, Derek's jaw remained set, the resolve apparent in his demeanor. This battle was far from over. Charley had struck a nerve, but could he lower the defenses built over years of entrenched corporate tradition? Charley took a deep breath, shifting the energy in the room and opting for a gentler but more earnest approach. What if we took this step together? What if we made the investment not just in underserved kids but also in fostering our company's growth? I know we face risks, but we also gain the chance to redefine who we are, the kind of company that isn't just profitable but also truly progressive. Think of the stories we tell that could inspire others. Suddenly, a flicker of James, a junior board member, caught Charley's eye. James was known for his unyielding skepticism but had recently grown curious about social impact. You're tapping into something important here, Charley. He began to speak, hesitantly at first but gaining momentum as he built upon Charley's narrative. Together, they wove an elaborate vision that started shedding light on Derek's rigid ideology. They began to speak of collaboration rather than confrontation, and Charley felt power surge through him, not merely from a desire to win a vote, but to emerge as a leader capable of creating a unified vision that advanced both ethics and business. As Charley continued to speak, he couldn't shake the nagging realization that he was pushing against years of resistance. With every step forward, something within him felt liberated. Gone was the desperate yearning to seek approval solely from outward success. In its place, he felt the emergence of a robust conviction that merged compassion and entrepreneurship. But just as hope began to unveil its precious petals, Derek interrupted sharply, raising an eyebrow. "You seem to be getting ahead of yourself, Charley. While rhetoric can inspire, what remains is a clear decision to make. This isn't a simple game of persuasion." The boardroom simmered, and Charley found himself suddenly aware of how high the stakes had risen. Not only the proposal was at risk, but also the vision he had begun to internalize, one where success was intertwined with the lives of others. He couldn't back down now. His fate, his identity, and his future were all teetering on this precipice. Deep within, a voice stirred, urging him to confront this critical juncture head-on. What were the consequences of his choices, and could he muster the courage to define success on his own terms even if it risked everything he'd built? With one final look around the table, Charley prepared his next words, sensing the gravity of the moment. Would he let Derek determine his fate, or would he claim his own future amidst this heated debate? The time had come to face the depths of his own convictions and the ramifications that would emerge from his resolute stand. As Charley's heart raced, he felt the world around him shrink to the confines of the boardroom. Derek's gaze bore down, a stalwart reminder of everything the corporate hierarchy represented, yet Charley felt emboldened by the very weight of the moment. He cleared his throat, fighting the tremor in his voice. "Derek," he began, grounding himself in direct address, "I respect your viewpoint, but we have to acknowledge the changing landscape. If we don't mold our identity in alignment with these emerging values, we risk fading into obscurity." Each word dripped with conviction, fueled by the image of Mia, the girl whose future hung in the balance of his decision. He realized then that he wasn't just in a battle for the proposal, he was in a tug-of-war with his own fear of inadequacy, a fear he had carried throughout his career. James leaned in, visibly intrigued. "In a world that increasingly prioritizes social responsibility, why can't we be at the forefront of change?" The support flickered like a beacon. Each nod from him, however slight, ignited Charley's passion further. Derek's reaction was immediate, his features tightening. "Change is inevitable, but it must be strategic. We can't act impulsively based on emotions." It was evident that Derek was digging in, clinging to the safety of established protocols, while Charley sensed the resources of innovation flowing just beyond them. "The strategic approach," Charley countered, energy surging in his veins, "is not just a matter of numbers, it involves investing in real human potential. I've spent years climbing the corporate ladder, but in doing so, I've neglected what it means to uplift others." He felt the vulnerability in exposing his own journey, but it was liberating, a release of the burden carried for too long. His peers exchanged glances as if weighing his declarations. Charley caught a glimpse of uncertainty, perhaps even a burgeoning curiosity, their walls prickling with doubt. Was it possible that he could usher in a shift, not just for their company, but for himself as well? Amidst the murmur of whispered thoughts, Charley took stock of the room. Clarity flooded his mind, a personal truth emerged: success should no longer be quantified merely through profit margins or personal gain. This was about legacy, about paving the way for a future where empathy became an indelible part of their successes. "Imagine what we could achieve if we made this investment," he continued, the seeds of visionary optimism blossoming. "We don't just have the opportunity to mentor a few, we have the potential to inspire entire generations. The ripple effects could redefine not just our company, but the entire industry." Derek's brow furrowed, and Charley sensed the cracking of Derek's staunch resolve. "This isn't a charity, Charley," Derek replied, but his tone held a hint of hesitation, a wavering that didn't go unnoticed. "No," Charley replied, his voice steadying. "It's an investment, one that could ensure our relevance long into the future. It's time for us to look beyond our own fears. What if, instead of playing it safe, we took this chance? What if we actually bravely stepped into a new paradigm?" As he spoke, something primal began to bubble within him. Here was a turning point not just for his career, but for a reflection of his true self. He was no longer merely a cog in a corporate machine, he was carving an identity driven by purpose, one rooted in actionable compassion. The intensity in the boardroom grew palpable, and Charley could almost feel chains of old ways shatter as thoughts collided. An internal revolution was underway, a deeply personal evolution that resonated beyond numbers on a spreadsheet. Derek's hands clenched against the table, and the denial etched in his face confirmed Charley's apprehensions. His lifelong belief that success could only stem from rigid business rules stood at a crossroads against the burgeoning ideology of transformational leadership. Before any conclusion could crystallize, Charley felt a sudden realization the struggle he faced was more profound than corporate politics. It was the essence of who he was as a leader. Whether he faltered in his belief or pressed forward boldly would redefine his entire trajectory. Suddenly, the door swung open, and an unexpected voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me, everybody." The voice belonged to someone outside the board's typical inner circle, and Charley's heart raced again. Who was this entering now, and what impact would their presence have on the ongoing debate? Would it sway sentiments further or ignite even greater conflict? The stakes had never been higher. Charley was standing on the brink of change. His next move could either solidify his newfound beliefs or shatter them completely, forever altering his path. A hush fell over the boardroom as the newcomer stepped inside, a middle-aged woman with an aura of resilience that seemed to cut through the corporate polish. Her clothes were modest, and yet there was an energy around her that spoke volumes. Charley couldn't determine if it was hope or desperation in her eyes, but one thing was clear: she wasn't here by accident. "Who are you?" Derek demanded, his voice a mixture of annoyance and confusion, clearly unsettled by this interruption. "I'm Laura," she replied, her clarity piercing the tension with unexpected ease. "And I'm here to share the story of my daughter. She's been job hunting for months after graduating, struggling to even get a foot in the door." The board members exchanged glances, with Derek's skepticism written on his face like an open book. Charley felt a flicker of curiosity. He leaned forward, eager to hear more. "She's incredibly talented and hardworking," Laura continued, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But every time she applies, she's met with silence until today, that is. Today, she applied to your company." The weight of her words hung in the air. Charley felt as if each heartbeat reverberated through the room. While the board had been tangled in procedural rhetoric, she laid bare the very human impact of their decisions. In that moment, Charley recognized an opportunity, a chance to embody the philosophy he had been advocating for. "I want you to understand something," Laura pressed on, her voice gaining strength. "My daughter isn't just a name on a resume. She's a part of a generation that is hungry for purpose and connection, not just a paycheck. We see companies like yours as gatekeepers to dreams, yet here we sit, discussing numbers and protocols." Charley's mind raced. This was more than just a chance meeting, it was a catalyst for what he needed to convey. He could feel the room's attention shift towards him, and he seized that moment. "Laura, thank you for sharing this with us. Your daughter's experience illustrates exactly what I've been trying to convey." Derek's mouth twitched in disbelief, but Charley pressed on. "What if we used our resources not merely to fill slots, but to genuinely engage the next generation? Empathy should not just be a buzzword, it can drive innovation and loyalty. Imagine a workforce shaped by diverse stories like Laura's daughter's." The palpable frustration in Derek's features tightened like a vice. "We have protocols for hiring for a reason," he snapped. "We can't risk our reputation by veering from established practices." Charley felt the tension rise again, but he sensed something shifting. "But isn't your reputation already at stake? Isn't it fragile if we ignore the human aspect of our business?" His voice was firm, tempered with urgency. "We can show courage, Derek. Rather than hesitate out of fear, let us invite transformation. Let us engage." Laura nodded, her eyes glistening. "If companies choose to uplift rather than just process, you will not only gain talent, you will create advocates. People passionate about their work. It's the kind of loyalty that can't be bought. Charlie's heart swelled. This external force had not just punctuated their internal debate, it had ignited an urgent transformation within him. He realized that the boardroom had become a battleground not just for a proposal, but for the future legacy of everyone involved. Derek's brow furrowed deeper, perhaps contemplating the weight of tradition against the cries for change. The silence extended as realization dawned, a reckoning echoing in the hearts of Charlie's peers. Then, as if a door had flung wide open, Charlie blurted, "Let us hold a session where we engage with candidates like Laura's daughter. Let us learn firsthand what we can do better. This isn't just about proposals anymore, it's about redefining our culture." In those words, he felt the seeds of something much larger sprouting. The abrupt entry of Laura had forced his colleagues to consider paths previously untraveled. But before anything could be finalized, Derek's piercing glare turned to Charlie. "You want to gamble our success on a whim?" The air crackled with tension, and Charlie took a deep breath, grappling with the gravity of their standoff. Here was the moment, a division between safety and bravery, the unresolved dichotomy of what a leader must choose. As the voices began to rise in debate, an unsettling uncertainty lingered in Charlie's mind. Had he fully grasped the magnitude of what he had set in motion? Did he have the conviction to steer this ship into uncharted waters? The path stretched before him, and his heart raced once more, a question hanging silently in the air. Could he truly embody the change he sought, or would he retreat at the first sign of resistance? Charlie left the boardroom with a knot in his stomach, reflections of the heated discussion swirling in his mind like a storm. The faces of his colleagues lingered. Derek, rigid and dismissive, epitomizing the old guard; Laura, unwavering and sincere, embodying the fire of determination they desperately needed. He had provoked a conversation, yet uncertainty draped itself over him like a heavy cloak. As he walked through the gleaming office floors, the cacophony of ringing phones and buzzing conversations felt jarring against the weight of his thoughts. Each step echoed a dilemma: had he initiated a shift or merely stirred the pot? Initiatives could easily drown in boardroom tradition, but his resolve flared again. He refused to let that be his legacy. Determined to build on Laura's poignant message, Charlie made a beeline for his office. He needed a plan, a strategy that could transcend the rhetoric of usual hiring practices and embody a shift towards real human engagement. This wasn't just about Laura's daughter, it was about shaping a new culture that valued stories over statistics. He slammed his door shut, the sound mirroring the urgency pounding in his chest. Pacing back and forth, he envisioned the structure of a new hiring initiative, one that prioritized connection over protocol. He thought of the potentials, the candidates who had slipped through the cracks, invisible under layers of resumes and arbitrary criteria. Engagement sessions, he muttered to himself, where we interact, listen, create a dialogue. With each idea, Charlie felt particles of his doubt erode. This would be about vulnerability, not defensiveness. He would gather a diverse panel, composed not only of his peers but also community leaders, educators, and even people like Laura, who knew firsthand the struggles young applicants faced. Yet, would Derek see the value? That lingering skepticism haunted him. A boardroom battle would be one thing, but could Charlie bring his colleagues along on this vision? Would they recognize the merit of empathy over metrics in improving their hiring practices? Therein lay his next challenge. He decided on a radical approach: propose a mandatory workshop where every board member would hear stories from job seekers, explore the journey of recruitment from the other side. Charlie leaned heavily into the idea, scrawling notes fervently on his notepad. It was a captivating solution born from connection, not compliance. But there was an obstacle: Derek would not surrender his fortress of traditional values easily. Charlie needed allies to combat the inertia that seemed to tether the team. Gathering his nerve, he composed an email to several colleagues whom he sensed were also teetering on the edge of change, the future generation of leaders in the company. He invited them to a brainstorming session, emphasizing innovation and collaboration. As he sat back, exhaling in relief, a spark of fear electrified his pulse. The initiative would hinge not on his voice alone, but on building a coalition grounded in the movement he sought. Could he convince enough colleagues to join him? Would they be willing to stand alongside him as they navigated this uncharted territory? With each passing moment, conviction intertwined with trepidation. The stakes felt impossibly high. Not only was he challenging the status quo, he was testing the core of his own leadership identity. Would he rise to the occasion or falter under the weight of doubt? The door seemed wide open for change, but with it came the chilling realization that a decision lay ahead, one that would reveal both the strength of his resolve and the fragile nature of corporate culture. As anticipation hung heavy in the air, only one thought surged forward: the time had come to face the pushback. Would the vision of transformation withstand the scrutiny of a corporate landscape unaccustomed to such vulnerability? Charley woke up the next morning with the weight of the previous day still pressed against his shoulders. The moment he stepped into the office, the stark contrast of the polished floors and high corporate ceilings loomed larger, amplifying the thoughts swirling in his mind. As he navigated through the crowds of colleagues, the anxiety settled heavily in his chest. The morning's conversations had yet to unfold, and he would have to hold his ground while working toward attention for engagement sessions. He settled into his office, the familiar scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint aroma of printer ink. The sun pierced through the blinds, creating playful patterns on his desk, an ironic confidence he didn't feel. It was time to rally the troops. He reviewed the list of colleagues he had invited to his brainstorming session, feeling an odd mix of excitement and dread. Would they see the value in what he proposed? Charley's mind grappled with their potential skepticism, especially Derek's. He opened his email, glancing cautiously at the responses. A couple came back quickly, some with a hint of enthusiasm, while others were met with undecided silence. It fueled his uncertainty but also his resolve. He couldn't let a few hesitant replies be the death knell for his initiative. Each reply he received was another ripple in the shifting waters, stirring his determination to forge ahead. Determined to invigorate his pitch, Charley drafted ideas for the session on a new notepad. Voices pulsed through his head from yesterday's meeting, Laura's conviction mixing with Derek's icy skepticism. Charley realized he needed to harness that tension. He could frame it as a pivotal transition for the company, a developmental milestone rather than a threat to their current modus operandi. He could almost visualize the workshop intimate gatherings where applicants shared their journeys. Raw stories echoed in his ears. He had lived through moments when he was reduced to a number on a spreadsheet, invisible beyond the data lines. The notion of transforming those narratives into something tangible and engaging would resonate with potential allies. As he scribbled furiously, the phone rang, pulling him from his deep focus. It was Laura. "Hey Charley, I got your email. I'm in. I think this is exactly what we need. But we'll need to prepare for resistance, not just from Derek, but from others as well." Her voice ignited a spark. "I've already spoken to Ethan and Sarah. They said they'd support you." Her enthusiasm was infectious, lifting Charley's spirits higher. He could feel the tide shifting. If he could secure just a few more voices, the foundation for his initiative would be laid. A plan began to crystallize in his mind. He would seek to form a presentation that combined hard data with emotional narratives, marrying the metrics with the human experience. If he could illustrate the genuine need for connection in hiring, perhaps it would peel away layers of traditional resistance. But in the quiet spaces between the thoughts was Derek's looming presence. How could Charley frame this to win him over? Engaging Derek delicately without provoking his defensive walls was essential. Charley contemplated arranging a preliminary meeting just with Derek, to present his vision without others present. Perhaps if he understood the purpose behind the initiative, he could come around. The clock moved faster than he hoped, and soon the time for the brainstorming session arrived. As Charley entered the conference room, he felt the blend of trepidation and purpose. The hesitant voices of his colleagues began to collect into hopeful affirmations. He could see the flickers of interest. Perhaps he wasn't so alone after all. But as people began to settle in, a thought pierced through the buzz of anticipation: was he truly prepared for the backlash that might follow? After all, engaging in vulnerability often invites scrutiny. As Charley stood before the gathering, he took a deep breath. The journey toward change had begun, but was he ready to expose what lay at the core of his ambitions, particularly when the shadows of doubt loomed ever closer? His voice steadied, a conscious choice. It was now or never, to clarify his vision and invite others to join him in this transformative endeavor. Would his courage to share these raw truths forge new paths, or would it reveal cracks in his leadership under the weight of opposition? In that charged moment, with the first words about to leave his mouth, the question hung like a tightrope: would he take the leap, or would he falter in midair? Charley stood in front of the group, a mix of familiar faces and curious onlookers reflecting the corporate spirit he had once been deeply embedded in. But now, he sensed the air was charged with anticipation, not for the usual metrics or strategic reviews, but for something far more significant. It was the beginning of something transformative. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "What we are discussing today is not just another initiative. It's a pivot towards a legacy, a genuine engagement with the potential we often overlook." The attention in the room felt palpable, and he paused, allowing his thoughts to crystallize. Charley shared Laura's story, carefully illustrating what it meant to be more than just a name on a resume. The room resonated with empathy and understanding, a collective murmur of recognition validating his resolve. "This is what I faced growing up. This is what many young people today face. We need to create pathways instead of barriers." With every word, Charley watched expressions shift. Skepticism was slowly replaced by curiosity, and he pressed forward, weaving in data and examples that demonstrated the efficacy of empathetic recruitment practices, companies that had thrived post-transition, not in spite of these shifts but because of them. "Imagine being part of a company that not only succeeds but also sparks change in communities," he articulated passionately, seeing heads nodding in tentative approval. "We are standing on the cusp of a cultural shift that can redefine our corporate identity. It's more than social responsibility, it's grounded in our survival and relevance in an ever-evolving industry." He dismissed the flicker of fear that crept in, the worry that Derek's skepticism would overshadow his moment. Instead, Charley sensed that a shared vision was taking shape in the room, momentum building like a wave, compelling his colleagues to look beyond their traditional comfort zones. Then came Derek's voice, steady as a metronome but tinged with reluctance. "Charley, I see the merit in wanting to help, but we have to be prudent. Can we balance this with our business model?" His question hung in the air, a challenge to Charley's vision. Instead of recoiling, Charley met Derek's gaze, emboldened by the support swelling around him. "Derek," he replied, "this isn't about abandoning our business model. It's about evolving it to meet the future. If we invest in mentorship today, we cultivate loyalty, innovation, and talent that align with our mission." Someone in the back piped up. "What if we can launch a pilot program? Test it on a smaller scale?" It was Ethan, stepping into the fray. Charley felt a spark ignite. This was what he had hoped for: collaborative thinking rather than guardrails of reluctance. "Yes!" Charley exclaimed, encouraged. "A pilot program that would allow us to gather metrics, engage our community and, most importantly, change lives. We'd be the first in the industry leading this kind of movement." The discussion veered into a collaborative brainstorming session, ideas amalgamating into a compelling vision. Charley felt his confidence swell. This was the transitioning point he had so desperately sought. Possible milestones, timelines, and measurable goals formed on the whiteboard, framed by personal conviction and professional integrity. Finally, after what felt like a whirlwind of discussion, Charley addressed the room one last time. "We are in firm ground right now, but I know there will be pushback. I'm ready for it, and I hope you all are too. Let us pledge to advocate for this initiative together. We have the capacity to drive change for not just our futures but the futures of the countless individuals who mirror the struggles we've witnessed." And then, after a moment of silence, a ripple of applause erupted, echoing profoundly within him. Derek stood visibly conflicted, yet the resolve in his eyes suggested a begrudging acceptance. "I see what you're proposing, Charley. I still have concerns, but perhaps it's time I reconsider the narrative we've clung to." Each word marked a turning point of acceptance. Charley held his breath, a sigh of relief mingled with the exhilaration of burgeoning responsibility entwined. In the days that followed, the feedback flowed back from the boardroom to the community, a palpable momentum that punctuated a deep-seated transformation. Meetings expanded, frameworks developed, and soon enough, Charley stood at the forefront of their first community engagement event, ready to introduce what they had envisioned together. On the day of the pilot launch, surrounded by eager faces of young participants, Charley recognized a profound change within himself. Standing before them, he was no longer just the CEO of a tech company, he was the catalyst for real opportunities, embodying the very change he had sought to instill. "I promise to always believe in you," he addressed the crowd. Confidence coursed through him, no longer bound by his former fears of judgment or doubt. They were not just the leaders of tomorrow, they were individuals with stories that demanded to be heard. Charley realized that through this journey, he had not only reshaped their futures but had woven his own path toward authentic leadership. As he watched the crowd engage, the satisfaction of transformative impact radiated deep within him. He had conquered the greatest challenge of all, to bridge the divide between personal and professional growth, to foster innovation that stemmed from shared humanity. This wasn't just an achievement, it was the start of a legacy, a chance to endure in the ever-evolving narrative of corporate responsibility, a commitment he now fully embraced. So here is the moment to act. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and transform. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more amazing content. Comment below your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Your support is what keeps the flame of personal overcoming stories burning bright.